by creating an hypothesis, it has to be tested and it has to be proved so that we can get a proper solution to a particular problem. In the research process itself, the first thing is that identification of research problem. Next one is to see the objectives of research. Whatever the plan which is made by the researcher in advance, it helps the researcher or it acts the researcher as a framework. Hello everyone, I am Harshita, lecturer, Department of Commerce, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. My dear students, today we are in the 6th session, that is the last session of Unit 1 of the subject, that is Business Research Method, and the Unit 1 is Introduction to Business Research. So today we shall wind up this unit, that is today we are in the last session. We are going to learn few of the small topics in this particular session. So let us quickly recall what we have discussed in a previous session. So in a previous session, I have covered this topic, that is business research process. So it is a step-by-step process and I have told you have to go through in that particular sequence itself. And it is a very important question for 10 marks. So in your exam, you might expect a question for 10 marks on business research process and it is a step-by-step procedure. Okay. In today's session, we shall continue with new concept, that is problem formulation. Of course, it is one of a part of business research process where we are going to identify the problem. So that is known as what? Problem formulation. So I have told you in the previous session itself, so if we identify a problem, the problem is half solved. Okay. So in a research activity, instead of collecting the information randomly, first we have to identify what is the problem. After identifying the problem, we will come to know what is the problem. Then we will collect the information to solve that particular problem. So that is known as what? Problem formulation. So in today's session, we shall see how the problem should be and how we are going to identify that problem. So the first one is meaning of research problem. Now what is this research problem? So a research problem is a statement. So it is a statement about which we are going to find the solution. Okay. So a research problem is a statement about an area of concern or condition to be improved. So it may be a subject or it may be a statement where extra care has to be given, where it has to be solved, okay, and it is a condition to be improved. So it may be a condition where it has to be improved in the future, a difficulty to be eliminated. So a difficulty, or it is a problem where it cannot be eliminated. So for that we have to find a solution to eliminate that problem, or a troubling question. So it may be a question also, or it may be an irritating question where it has to be solved. For that we have to find the solution, okay, that exists in the scholarly literature. So in a scholarly literature, if there is a troubling question or a thing that cannot be eliminated or that has to be improved, or the area which has to be given more concern to solve that, so they are termed as what? Research problem. In theory or in practice, that points to the need for meaningful understanding and deliberate investigation. So in these type of situation where there is a requirement of investigation or where there is a requirement of information to collect to solve that particular problem, that is known as what? Research problem. That is the problem which have arisen in the literature. So what are the type of problems? So it may be a problem, that is it may be a troubling question, or the thing that cannot be eliminated, or it has to be improved, or it has to be eliminated in the future, or the area which has to be given more concern to solve that. So they are all termed as what? Research problem. Hope you are clear with the meaning of research problem. Next we shall see what are the basic characteristics of research problem. So how the research problem should be. What are its characteristics? So the first one is reflecting on important issues or needs. So we have to reflect, or we have to give more importance on important issues or where there is more concern has to be given or where there is more need. So on that we have to reflect more. And the next one is basis or basing on factual evidence. It is non-hypothetical. So if it is non-hypothetical in nature and require actual evidence, not the hypothesis what we are giving, not the assumptions what we are making, but we want the actual evidence for that. Next, being manageable and relevant. It should be manageable, at the same time it should be relevant in nature. Suggesting a testable and meaningful hypothesis, avoiding useful answers. So, it requires a proper hypothesis, that is suggesting a testable. So, by creating an hypothesis, it has to be tested and it has to be proved so that we can get a proper solution to a particular problem. That is suggesting a testable and meaningful hypothesis, avoiding useless answers. So, instead of giving useless answer, whatever the hypothesis what we have made, so it has to be tested properly or it has to be experimented properly so that we can get the answer. So that are the basic characteristics. So these are the basic characteristics of research problem. So the first one is what? Reflecting on important issues. So important issues or the thing which is actually needed. So on that the problem has to be reflected. And the next one is basing on factual evidence. So we are not going to consider the hypothesis, we are going to consider the actual evidence. Next, being manageable as well as relevant. It should be manageable, at the same time it should be relevant in nature. Suggesting a testable as well as meaningful hypothesis. So a meaningful hypothesis has to be created so that it has to be tested as well as experimented so that we can get the exact result instead of useful answers or useless answers. Okay. Next one is formulation of research problem. So how we have to form a research problem? So there are 5 ways to formulate the research problem. So let us see which are the 5 ways to formulate the research problem. Specify your research objectives. I have already told you in the research process itself, the first thing is that identification of research problem. Next one is to see the objectives of research. So here also there are 5 ways to formulate the research problem. First one is specify the research objectives. Of course, whenever we conduct every activity or each and every activity, we have to know what is the objective of conducting that activity. In the same way, when we are going to collect the information, we have to know what is the objective, what is the ultimate objective that has to be achieved in the future by collecting the information. So first we have to specify your research objective. Next one is review its context or environment. So we have to go through the context, at the same time we have to go through the environment. Next one is explore its nature. So we have to explore. So we have to expand its nature. Next one is determine variable relationship. So there are number of variables which are included in research process. So it may be dependent variable or independent variable. So we have to determine the variable relationship among them. Next, alternative approaches. So other than the options what we have, what are the other alternative approaches that can be made in order to solve a particular problem? So these are the few ways in order to formulate a research problem. Now we shall discuss one by one. So the first one is specify research objectives. I have told you objective is what? It is to be achieved in the future. Okay. So a clear statement that defines all objectives can help you to conduct and develop effective as well as meaningful research. So research without a clear objective is useless. So even though after identifying the problem, we don't know what is the objective or the thing that has to be achieved in the future, then instead of collecting the information randomly without knowing the objective, so it will be a useless. So the first thing is that a clear statement that has to be prepared so that we have to know what is the future objective, what we are going to achieve in the future. So that has to be identified carefully. Next, review the context of your research problem. So we have to go through the problem. Okay. it is necessary to work hard. So we have to work hard to define and test all kinds of environmental variables to make your project successful. Once we know the problem, so we know the objective, next what we have to do? We have to study our problem in detail. So we have to know what are the factors that influence the research problem. So it is necessary to work hard to define and test all kinds of environmental factors that affects the or environmental variables that make the project successful. In order to make a problem successful, what are the initiatives that has to be taken? So in order to make the project successful, what are the environmental factors that make the project successful? On that we have to go through in detail. That is, we have to study in detail. Next, why do you need to do that? This step can help you to define if the important findings of your study will deliver enough data to be worth considering. So, after identifying the problem, we know the objective. Now we have to know, that is, why do you need to study that? So what is the purpose? So what is the ultimate aim? What is the ultimate goal that we want to reach by studying a particular topic? That is, why do you need to do that? So why we have to collect the information? So that is known as what? Objective. That is, specify research objective. Next one is explore the nature of research problem. So, explore the nature of research problem means what? We have to explore what is a research problem. So, research problem may range from simple to complex. So, here I have told you in the previous session itself, research is not an easy task. So, it is a step-by-step procedure where certain research will be too short, at the certain time certain research will be too long. So here research problem may range from simple to complex. Certain will be simplex and certain research problem may be complex, and everything depends upon the range of variables and their relationship. So all the research work depends upon the range of variables which influence the research work. At the same time, what is their relationship? Some of them can directly relevant to specific research question, while others are completely unimportant for your project. So whatever the variables we are going to collect, certain will fetch you the direct answers, but certain will not fetch you the direct answers. That is called as what? Unimportant for your topic. So explore the nature of research problem, whether it is a short research work or it is a too lengthy research work. So depending upon the variables available, in order to solve the problem, we can explore whether it is short or lengthy research problem. Next one is determine variable relationship, that is completing the entire process. So determine variable relationship. What are the relationship each and every problem has? That is, what are the variable relationship each and every problem has? Okay, so identifying the variables that affects the possible solutions to your research problem. I have told you certain variables or the certain solutions what the researcher will get will fetch you the direct answers, whereas others will not fetch you the direct answers. It has to be improved better. In that situation, identifying the variable that affects the possible solutions. So those collecting those variables which fetch you the direct solutions to your research problem. Deciding on the degree to which you can use and control all of them for the study purpose. So we have to collect those variables which can be easily fetch you the direct answers. Next one is determining functional relationship between the existing variable. So what are the functional relationship each and every variable has on a particular problem? Next, choose the most critical variable for the solution of your research problem. So we have to choose the most critical variable for a solution of your research problem. And the next one is during the formulation stage, it is necessary to consider and generate as many potential approaches and variable relationship as you can. So here what you have to remember, so variable relationship has to be maintained. So we have to collect those variable which has a direct or which fetch you the direct solution, or else what are the studies that has to be made in that variable, or what are the relationship the variable has. Next one is alternative approaches. So what are the alternative approaches that has to be taken in problem formulation? Anticipate the possible consequences of alternative approaches. So what are the possible consequences that may arise for alternative approaches? There are different consequences that each course of action or approach can bring, and that's why you need to anticipate them. So we have to go for alternative approaches. Instead of depending on a particular solution, we have to go through alternative approaches so that it will be easy for us to solve the problem. It is the primary goal of any research process. So instead of depending on a particular or any one of the activity, so we have to undertake alternative procedures or alternative options has to be taken. So this is about formulation of research problem. Next one is basic steps in formulating the research problem. So let us see what are the various steps that has to be taken in problem formulation. Identify the broad study area. So we have to take into consideration what is a broad study area. So what is my study area which I am more interested? So that I have to decide in advance. This is a great idea to thinking about the subject area of your interest. So on which subject I am more interested, on that we have to find a problem. Okay, you should identify the field in which you would like to work a long time after your academic study or graduation. Now, how to form a problem, or what is a procedure to identify the problem formulation? So, I have to select those topics where I am more interested rather than going a topic which I exactly don't know anything about it. So, what I have to do? I have to go through the subject, so where I am more interested and where I have more interest or where I can fetch you more information on that particular topic. It will help you tremendously to get an interesting research topic. So, in order to get a particular interesting research topic, I have to go through a subject where I am more interested. So, the first step is that identify the broad study area where I am more interested. Next one is dissect the broad study area into sub-areas. Now, I have identified which is my interest. Now, in that subject itself, what are the sub-areas? Okay. So, in this stage, you need to dissect and specify your research broad area study into some sub-areas. Suppose I am interested in marketing. Okay. So, what are the sub-areas that are in the marketing itself? What are the sub-areas where I am interested? So, I have to dissect the broad study area into sub-areas. You would consult with your supervisors in this regard. Write down the sub-areas. So, I have to write down what are my sub-areas. So, in the main area itself, that is in a broad area, what are the sub-areas where I am more interested? For example, if you select unemployment as your broad study area, then dissect it into unemployment and social stability. Now, this is a sub-area here. Okay. So, the main area is unemployment, that is broad area is unemployment, and the sub-area is social stability. In the same way, unemployment and crime. So, crime is the sub-area, unemployment and individual frustration. So, this will be the sub-area. So, on which area you are interested, so you will select that. Among that also, you have to decide the sub-areas. In this case, your research title may be How Unemployment Produces Criminal Activity. So, your topic will be unemployment, how unemployment produces criminal activity, or how it creates frustration in the mind among the unemployed people. So, like that they are going to study in detail among the sub-areas also. So, this is dissect the broad study area into sub-area. Next one is mark up your interest. Now, what is my interest? So, I have selected my area, I have selected my sub-area. Now, I have to see what is my interest. It is almost impossible to study all the sub-areas. So, there are in the employment itself. So, if you see here, there are unemployment and social stability, unemployment and crime, unemployment and individual frustration. So, there are number of sub-areas among the broad area. In the broad area also, there are number of sub-areas. So, it is difficult to study all the sub-areas. That's why you must identify your area of interest. In the sub area also, you have to identify what is your interest. Okay, you should select issues in which you are passionate about. In which area you are more passionate about, that area you have to select. Your interest must be most important determinant to your research study. In which area you are interested, if you study on that, even you will get interested on that particular topic. Once you selected your research study of interest, you should delete the sub areas in which you are not feel interested. So, I have told you, once you study the broad area, among that also you have to select all the sub areas. Now, there are number of sub areas in which we can't study in detail about all the sub areas. So, here also you are going to make a choice whether out of these 3 sub areas, which one I have to select. Suppose I am selecting this one, I have to delete these 2 sub areas. Okay. Keep in mind that if you lose your interest in your research study, it won't bring any results eventually. Of course, it's not only relating to research, in any other activity. If we have interest, of course, the work goes on easily. In the same way, in the research also, if I am going to select a topic which I am not interested, then of course my research work will be very difficult. So what I have to do? I have to choose a topic where I am more interested. Next one is study research questions. The next step is that I have to study all the research questions to my sub area. In this step, in formulating a research problem, you would point out your research questions under the area of interest as you decided in the previous stage. So, in my previous stage, I have selected one of the sub area. Now, I have to frame a questions on that sub area. Okay. So, if you select unemployment as your study area, your question might be how unemployment impacts on individual social status. So, unemployment was the main area. Among that, I have selected sub area. Now, I have to frame questions on that. So, that is how unemployment impacts on individual social status, how it affects the social stability, how it creates frustration in the minds of individuals. So, define what research problem or question you are going to study. So, on what problem I am going to study. Of course, I have selected unemployment. Of course, I have selected the sub area in that. In the sub area as well as in the employment, what are the questions? So, there should be a question. Then we are going to find out the solution for that problem. Correct? So, what is the problem in my area? So, that I have to decide. The more you study the research problem, it will be just a relevant and fruitful to solve the problem indeed. So, problem formulation is a main thing. So, I have to identify the problem in my area so that I can find solution to my problem. So, in the area as well as in the broad area or in the sub area, I have to frame a question for which I have to solve or for which I have to find the information in order to solve that problem. That I have to decide in the third stage. I have to decide in the fourth stage, that is study research questions. Next one is set out objectives. Now, I have framed the questions. I know what is the question for which I have to find the solution. Now, I have to find out the objectives. So, set out conspicuously your research route objectives as well as sub-objectives. Now, what do you mean by objectives and sub-objectives? What I am going to achieve in the future or what I am going to study at the end in the future. That is known as what? Objectives. So, research objectives essentially come from research questions. So, if I have the questions, so by question itself, by framing the question itself, I'll come to know what is the objective that I have to achieve in the future. If you do study impact on unemployment on individual social status as a research problem or research question. So, if I am going to study on this particular topic, I'll know what is my objective. Then set out what you like to explore to address. So what is my ultimate objective? What I am going to achieve in the future? For example, your main objective might be examine the employment status in a particular society or state. So what is the unemployment status? So what is the unemployment status in particular society or status? So that I am going to explore. And sub-objectives would be its effect on individuals' social life. So, employment status will be the main objective, that is what is unemployment. So, what is the unemployment status will be the main objective, and the sub-objective will be what its effect on individual social status. Setting out specific main and sub-objective are so crucial. Now, the first thing what we have discussed is, so we have to identify the main area, that is broad area, next sub area, and I have to frame the questions. After framing the questions, I have to find the solutions for that. That is how I am going to. So, your fourth step will be study research questions. Next one is set out objectives. So, I have to know which is my objective. So, here also main objective and sub objective has to be identified. Next one is access your objectives. So now you should evaluate your objectives to make sure that the possibility of attaining them through the research study. Now I have identified my objective. Now what are the possible ways to achieve this objective that has to be identified? Access your objectives in terms of time. So time, budget, resources and technical expertise at your hand. Now, in order to achieve this objective, whether I require or what is the amount or what is the cost which is required to achieve that objective, what is the time required, what is the budget required, what are the resources. So, what are the resources to collect the information, whether I have the sufficient resources, and what are the technical expertise, it's there in my hand. So, that I have to decide. You should also access your research questions in a light of reality. I have to think in reality whether I have all the resources to achieve my objectives. So, determine what outcome will bring your study. So, what would be my outcome? If you can access accurately the purpose of the research study, it will bring significant results in the long run. Suppose if I study my objective in detail, if I study the situation in detail, that is in order to achieve my objective, what are the possible ways? Whether I have sufficient budget, whether I have time, whether I have resources, whether I have technical knowledge about it. So, everything I have to study, I have to analyze myself. So, in fact, research objective, determine the value of the study you are going to work out. So, what is the ultimate aim? What is the ultimate objective you are going to achieve by accessing your objectives? Next, check back. So, the next basic step of problem formulation is check back. Before you go on research work, you should review all steps in formulating the research problem and all the things that you have done till now for the purpose of your research study. So, before going through the research study, I have to analyze myself whether I am ready to do that research work. Whatever the problem formulation I have made, so whether it is clear or not. So, then ask yourself about your enthusiasm. So, whether I am enthusiastic to solve that particular problem or not, which I am selected. So, do you have enough resources to set up? If you have quite satisfied, then you forward to undertake your research work. So, if you are happy with whatever the work you have done in the process of problem formulation, then you can go through that. So, if you are happy, then you can go through the research work. If you can change any of other plans in the light of reality, if it requires. Now, in check back, what you will do? So, you have identified everything, you know what is your problem, you know how you have to achieve, you know what is the objective, you have analyzed everything, whether you have proper resources, whether you have time to achieve that. Now, after you have to go through the flashback, that is check back and see everything, and if you are satisfied, then you can go for further research work. If you are not satisfied or if you want to change your plans, then you can go back and change your plans again and come out with the different plans. That is check back. So, these are all about your basic steps in forming research plan or basic steps in forming the research problem. So these are the few steps in formulating the research problem. And the next topic is business research plan. This is also we have discussed in the business research process itself. So we shall have a brief introduction here. So preparing business research plan. Now what do you mean by business research plan? You know, for each and every activity there should be a proper plan which will be decided in advance. In research also, whenever a researcher conducts a research work, he should have a proper plan. So which means what? It is a framework within which all the activities will be conducted. So business research plan is also known as research plan. It will build a framework to bring the research program into practice. So here the plan, whatever the plan which is made by the researcher in advance, it helps the researcher or it acts the researcher as a framework or it acts as a blueprint for the researcher to do the activity. It provides blueprint to begin the research program. So whenever you want to start a program, instead of going directly and starting the program, you should have a proper plan. So the research plan acts as a model to carry out the formal survey as well as investigation. So when he has a proper plan which is decided in advance, he will know how to collect the information. What are the sources of information, from where he has to collect, whether he has sufficient amount, at the same time whether he has sufficient time to collect the information. Everything will be mentioned in that proper plan. So, and of course, for not only for business research, in each and every activity, if we prepare a proper plan, we will go through that plan only, so that our ultimate aim can be achieved. If there is no proper plan, randomly if we go on making something, so it will be a waste. So what you have to do? We have to make a proper plan. Accordingly, we have to go through. It reveals the methods and procedure necessary for obtaining the information. So, in research problem, we have to collect the information in order to solve that problem, right? If the research plan is decided in advance, so it reveals the methods. What are the methods and procedures to be followed in order to achieve that plan? It determines the methods and sources for collection of data. So, what are the various sources for collecting the data? The data can be collected through primary or through secondary sources. So, here it decides in advance where the data can be collected. The research plan designed for a particular problem includes the following factors. So, if the research plan is decided in advance, let us see what are the things we will know in advance. So, the first one is the way of data collection. So, the data can be collected, as I have told you, the data can be collected through two sources. One is primary, other one is secondary sources. So, there are two ways to collect the data. One is primary sources and secondary sources. Now, what do you mean by primary sources? The data which is collected for the first time, that is fresh data or the raw data which is collected by the researcher for the first time is called as what? Primary sources. So, here the data can be collected through direct interviews or through questionnaires where they are going to take the information face to face or where they are going to collect the information face to face. They are known as what? Primary sources. Secondary sources means what? There are certain research where the secondary data can be collected and the research can be done. So, secondary sources means what? They are already published data. So, it may be from the newspaper, it may be from the magazines, or it may be from any of the articles, or it may be from the previous research papers. So, here the researcher will refer that and he will do the research work. So, through proper research plan, we will come to know what are the ways for data collection, whether we have to go for primary sources or secondary sources, or how we have to collect that data. Next one is the skill held by the researchers. So, here the quality of the research work depends upon the skill of the researcher. So, through proper research plan, we will come to know what is the skill held by the researcher. Next one is organizing data collection sources and reliability of the selected sources. So, if you select the primary source, what is the reliability? So, how will be the reliability of primary source of collection of data? So, that can be identified in advance. Next, time available for research. Of course, research is not an easy task. It requires huge amount of time. That is, lot of time is required to collect the data. And if they go for primary collection of data, it requires few more time. That is, requires lot of time, because each and every respondent has to be interviewed individually and collect the information where the raw data has to be collected. In that situation, what is the time availability in the research? Whether it requires 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or how many years that requires to collect the data. Next one is the cost related to the research. So, of course, when we go for primary sources, we require huge amount of money. So, in that situation, if the researcher has less amount of money, then he can go for secondary sources. Or if he has huge amount of money, at the same time lot of time to collect the data, a lot of time to complete the research work, in that situation he can go for primary sources. So, everything that can be decided in advance through proper research plan. So, this is about business research plan. My dear students, in today's session, we have discussed about problem formulation as well as business research plan. See you all in my next session with a new topic. Till then, take care. Thank you.